Getting near chow time.
It'll be just like them Japs that come busting in when a man's hungry.
Bogey's coming in ahead!
What'd I tell you?
Forget it. When I get through with these kamikazes, you can eat 2 meals.
The Treasury Salute, featuring as guest narrator Major Andre Baruch. This is a program of the United States Treasury. You salute with us heroes of this war, the officers and men of the USS Newcomb. And now the Treasury Salute, featuring Major Andre Baruch in a salute to the officers and men of the USS Newcomb.
And so I christen you the USS Newcomb.
It was 1943 in the Boston Navy Yard, where the sleek new destroyer slid down the ways and into the annals of America's finest naval tradition. She bore a proud name, the Newcomb, for she honored Commodore Frank H. Newcomb of the United States Coast Guard. It was a name to live up to in World War II. A name which had distinguished itself in the war between the states and in the Spanish-American War. How well will she do it? It's hard to predict such matters, but she's a trim fighter. She looked good on her shakedown cruise, and she was cocky and proud as she escorted a carrier down to the canal. And she got her sea legs, keeping company with a cruiser bound out of Frisco for Pearl. Yes, she looked good. And she was good.
The USS Newcomb went into action off the Marshall Islands.
The Newcomb covered the invasion of the Marianas. On June the 21st, 1944, she sank a jet sub off Japan.
The Newcomb took part in the seizure of Peleliu. The Newcomb was the first U.S. destroyer to enter Leyte Gulf in the invasion of the Philippines. She scored torpedo hits on a Jap battleship, later sunk.
Yes, she was at Ormoc, Mindoro, Lingayen Gulf, and at Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. The skipper of the Newcomb was Commander Ira McMillian of Coronado, California. He was watching the ack fire high on the horizon. He pulled his baseball cap over his eyes and turned to his exec.
Yeah, they're at it again, the kamikazes.
Look like we'll have visitors.
Wouldn't be surprised.
The crew was at battle stations, waiting. Word had been passed on. Jap suicide planes were expected. The tension was high, but still no visitors. The Newcomb rode the slight swell easily. The sun dropped down toward the horizon. The long wait had made the men restless, on edge.
Hey, getting near chow time.
It'll be just like them Japs that come busting in when a man's hungry.
Bogey's coming in ahead!
What'd I tell you?
Forget it. When I get through with these kamikazes, you can eat 2 meals.
The men leap to their stations. The electric motors whine and the gun muzzles arch around, sweeping the target area. The destroyer picks up speed as she knifes toward the little specks in the sky ahead.
Bogey's in sight! Bearing 300!
The specks suddenly became larger. Almost at once, the Newcomb's 20s and 40s opened up. Dark brown bursts appeared in the sky. One Jap tore through them, trying to line up the ship in his sights.
That one! Get on that one!
The Newcomb's heavy guns challenged the oncoming Japs. Bullets and shells hammered into him. And suddenly the plane faltered. The Jap lost control. Splat a few yards away. Another suicider was coming in, ready to make his bid. The Newcomb's gunners had him spotted. And the plane disappeared in a wall of ack-ack.
We cooked him up, but good.
Yeah? Then who's that?
Out of the brown smudge came the Jap. Much closer. A yellow flame flickered along his left wing. He was burning. Still on he came. On the bridge, Commander McMillian watched the oncoming plane. Suddenly he shouted,
Full turn. Hard over.
The quartermaster spun the wheel. The Newcomb heeled over in a sharp turn, churning up a fierce wake. There was no time for the Jap to turn. Down he plummeted, plunged into the sea at the spot where the Newcomb had been a moment before. The Japs buzzed warily out of range. The destroyer, sleek and chin up, jabbed through the sea. Like two fighters in the ring, the planes and the ship danced about. Then suddenly a third Jap ripped out of the sky. Sure he saw an opening.
Look at him.
He's flying on the water.
He was. In he came, fast and confident. The Newcomb's 5-inch batteries leveled toward him. The Jap hit the water but bounced up. On he came, bent upon a head-on crash.
Half turn.
Again the quartermaster turned the wheel, but the plane turned with the ship. For an instant, the men could see the Jap pilot. On he came, ripped through the gun mount, shattering himself against the after stack. The Newcomb shuddered, as though a giant hand had struck her. She listed heavily to starboard. On her deck was twisted wreckage, broken pipes. The wounded struggled to their feet. The dead lay silent. And in the wheelhouse, the quartermaster wrote carefully in the ship's log.
Plane hit on stack, causing damage, not known at present.
When the Jap suicider struck, the blinding flash was seen by another destroyer a mile away. She turned to lend a helping hand. But other eyes had seen the flash too. A fourth Jap plane banked in, coming in for the kill.
Look at that buggy come. Baby, he's mine.
Think they can knock us off? Okay, sonny boy.
And suddenly the Newcomb's 5-inch batteries opened up. The Jap veered, obviously surprised by the power the destroyer still carried. But it was too late. A burst caught him, set him on fire.
Look at Cookie cooking.
There goes a wing.
Yeah, and there he goes to meet his honorable ancestors.
But there was no time for cheering, and no time for rest. Two more Jap kamikaze planes were roaring in, one from the port bow, the other from the port quarter. The bullets ricocheted from the bridge, the straps, the deck. There was no time to dodge these two, no time to train guns on them. The Newcomb had to take this one standing up on the chin. The first plane had buried itself in the base of the stack. The other buried itself into the hole made by the first suicider. How does it feel to take this standing up? Here's what one of the crew said.
It was like a giant fist. The whole ship seemed to go under. Men and guns blew up. The heavy steel hatches, which we'd tightly dogged down, were blown off their hinges. The whole ship was full of smoke and flames. She lost all power and just sat there like a dead duck.
Miraculously, the bridge was intact. So was the forward portion of the Newcomb. But flames hid the stern from view.
Hey, the stern is gone.
Many thought he was right, but all had one thought.
Save the ship. Save the wounded. Yes, there were many heroes that day. There was Signalman Jesse Fitzgerald, who dragged a wounded photographer to safety, applied a tourniquet to his bleeding leg, fought his way through cascading sparks from broken wires, through burning gasoline, and then fought the fires.
But the kamikazes were not through. Another Jap was roaring in. This was it, he must have thought. This would be the kill. In the meantime, the other destroyer had reached the Newcomb. Fire hoses had helped drive back the flames, and the two ships were made fast. The men on the second destroyer fired as the Jap came in, but the Newcomb's superstructure obscured their sight. and then another gun opened.
Hey, that's our guns. Our 5 inches.
They must be firing them by hand.
Incredible but true. The Newcomb was still fighting. In the number 2 turret, Arthur McGuire, gunner mate first class of St. Louis, Missouri, was ramming in the shell.
Hey, Arthur, look at your hand. Skip it, ram her home.
His fingers were broken and bleeding, but he was still on the job. The gun was fired. The Jap was coming straight for the bridge, but the burst had blown him sideways. On he came, missed the bridge, skidded on the deck, and exploded on the other destroyer. With a gaping hole in the afterdeck and a portside a tangled web of broken lines and wildly sprouting fire hoses, he drifted slowly away, leaving the Newcomb afire, doomed. But there were heroes aboard the Newcomb, obstinate heroes.
There was Donald Keeler of Danbury, Connecticut. He had been at his station in the steering compartment. He put the ship in manual control. He heard that the magazines were expected to explode momentarily. He quickly ran to the Handy Billy, a small portable pump, got it started, and once again water was available to fight the fires.
There was Donald Newcomer of Portland, Oregon.
There was Malcolm Giles of San Jose, California. There was Lieutenant David Owens of Waukesha, Wisconsin.
Quickly, they had number 4 handling room under control. In number 3, steel was dripping like solder. Copper kettles were pools of molten metal. The men went in. The fires were doused. The magazines didn't blow up. Up forward, the sailors were fighting the fire with hand extinguishers.
There was Lieutenant John McNeil of Boston. The chief pharmacist's mate, Earl Sayer of Roseville, Ohio.
Hey, Earl. Blue Eyes got it bad. Looks like he's bleeding to death.
Blue Eyes was the nickname of the youngest sailor aboard. Sayer had no instruments, and the boy beside him was in fact bleeding to death. The blood spurted from a severed vein in his neck. Sayer stopped it with his fingers, stayed for an hour, and saved his life. Meanwhile, the men were battling frantically. Depth charges were neutralized and rolled over on the side. Wreckage, equipment, everything was pushed over to lighten the stern, to keep the Newcomb afloat, and she stayed afloat. Seven Jap suiciders had hurled themselves at the Newcomb. 3 had been shot down. 4 had connected. But the Newcomb had proved she could take it, and would take it again when she set sail once more, ready to take up the challenge of the kamikaze. And somewhere, looking down upon the broad Pacific, there was a sturdy figure of a man, himself a hero, Commodore Frank H. Newcomb, who looked upon the young heroes of the ship that bore his name and said to each of them and to the gallant ship herself, "Well done, well done."
Every American carries within his heart a burning love of freedom. That's why each one of us will buy more and more extra war bonds. When we buy bonds now, we can make certain that all of those cherished ideals for which our men have fought will be actualities as time goes on. And of course, war bonds mean that each of us is storing up financial freedom for later years. And that's mighty important, too. The United States Treasury thanks Major Andre Baruch and the other distinguished artists who appeared on this specially transcribed program. The Treasury Salute was written by G. Worthington Post from a story by Coast Guard war correspondent Evan Wiley and directed by Mark Goodson. The music was under the direction of Mark Warno. This is Ken Roberts speaking.